Welcome to Washington in Focus. I'm your host, Tim Clauser, with the Center Square's Western Washington reporter, Spencer Pauly. Spencer, you had an article come out in the last few days about services for immigrants or illegal or undocumented immigrants in the Seattle area, totaling around $6.5 million a year. Now, kind of a hot topic right now.
Yep, for sure.
Whether or not the city or any city or state should be giving these services, given the recent directions of the Trump administration. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what these services are doing in not Spokane, in Seattle, who might be benefiting from them, and sort of the legality of this issue right now, with the new administration pushing against this very thing.
Sure, Tim. I'll just say this was a pretty challenging story to tackle here, because it's such a broad idea here when we're talking about what the city does to provide resources and services for undocumented illegal immigrants. Now, I think it's important to know that Seattle is a sanctuary city, or as they like to describe themselves, a welcoming city. And that just means that they require all their city departments to prioritize policies that help immigrants or refugees, communities succeed, quote unquote. So when you put that in perspective, how do you find an exact financial statistic for this type of subject we're talking about? Now, the $6.5 million I got stems from the fact that the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs is what Seattle has that provides resources to immigrants regardless of their documentation, whether their status is, whether they are legal or illegal. They do not discriminate. And this has been a part of their policy since 2003. There's their quote unquote don't ask policy, meaning Seattle employees cannot inquire about someone's immigration status. And this is something that still remains true despite the Trump administration's efforts to have these sanctuary cities work to allow federal immigration enforcement come in and do their job and comply with them, which Seattle has taken a staunch stance against. And we've seen some illegal or some legal action taken. I think last week we saw a federal judge in California bar the Trump administration from denying federal funds to these sanctuary cities, including Seattle. We'll see where that goes from there. But to answer your question, the $6.5 million comes from what we're seeing from the Immigrant and Refugee Affairs. Now, what do? They do a lot of things with coordinating with our city departments to provide legal services, workforce development, and language access to immigrants and refugees. Now, I have to tell you, $6.37 million is a drop in the pan for what Seattle's expenditures are. It's a lot of money we're talking about here. Now, one of the programs that they do is the Seattle Legal Defense Network. Now, what this Legal Defense Network does is it assists illegal immigrants in immigration cases. And it also helps other immigrants as well. But that is a program that has just a $1.4 million budget. How much of that money can be used and go a long way in a year is hard to kind of scale, especially I think right now in the state where they're in this. I think the state of affairs right now, I think you're going to see a lot of people go to this source, and that's going to cause some a kind of an overload, I think, for this office and this program. And there's also one more program that I'd like to just mention that I had in the story here. But this comes from a different department. That's the Fresh Bucks voucher program. Now, they distribute a $40 stipend to income eligible households each month. And this goes towards produce, regardless of retailers, basically like a food stamps program, right? The thing is, so this goes to anyone, regardless of immigration status, who's just low income. The issue is that wait list for that program has been notoriously long. So a lot of people don't have access to that. And that's something the city has tried to expand. And whether or not they have been able to do so is kind of hard to know quite just yet.
Gotcha. So the city is spending around $6.5 million a year on these immigration services. Now, I think it's probably safe to say that you do have a probably decent amount of people coming through there that are illegal or undocumented immigrants accessing these services, but we don't know to say how many there are. Now, there was a note in your story that said there's around 100,000 foreign-born residents in Seattle,
Yeah.
of which 21,000 are illegal or undocumented immigrants. So about 2.7% of the population. I think it's worth noting here. I mean, you touched on it a little bit. Seattle's annual budget far surpasses $1 billion. So while a few $1 million is quite a bit of money, like you said, it's a drop in the bucket compared to the rest of the city's budget. So when you look at, say, what percentage is this many million of the total budget compared to what percentage are these residents of the total population, I think we're probably looking underneath what's proportional.
I think to look at that, though, what I think about is, does the city, do Seattleites, are they okay with spending millions of dollars, even if it is just a drop in the bucket, like we said? Is that something that bothers them? And I think because of Seattle and who people are, it's a very progressive city. I think they are okay with spending millions of dollars towards helping these illegal immigrants. In fact, I would bet that they wish that we increase spending on them. Whether it's a couple more million or even more, that's something that I don't quite know. But I could be confident saying that I think it's okay to spend $6.5 million in the opinion of a lot of Seattleites here. Not all of them, of course, and I think that's something to note. I'm sure some other people wish we could spend that money towards helping, say, U.S. veterans who are struggling. There's a homelessness issue where you're seeing actual American citizens on the streets, and that's something to also consider as well. But I think that's something to kind of note here when you're looking at the Seattle landscape and what they're willing to put their money on.
Spencer, you touched slightly on the block in California with a federal judge there saying, the Trump administration, at least at this point, cannot block federal funding to these cities that are so-called sanctuary states or sanctuary cities. Now, that block's in place right now. We don't know how long that'll last for, assuming that the administration tries to take this to the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court overturns that decision and they are able to withhold funding, what does that mean for Seattle? Is this going to be a major disruption in services? With only 2.7% of the population, will it be noticeable to the general public, or speak on that?
This is 21,000 some illegal immigrants who are, need these services. That's probably not enough already. It's not a sufficient amount of funding for that number of people, let's be honest. And, so when you're going to see cuts already, it's going to impact that community as well as other communities. The fact is, amid all of this legal action, the battle between city and the federal administration, I think Seattle will continue to justify that it is a sanctuary city and look at other, ways to enforce that, whether it's their don't ask policy, whatnot. They're not going to just fold, I think, but they also acknowledge that there is a big chance that they're going to lose a lot of funding. And that's something that you're seeing at the King County level as well, that they've continued to discuss. It's basically preparing themselves for the impacts to cut funding from the federal administration because of these policies that they enforce. Now, Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell has continued to say he supports the illegal immigration policy. It will not work with the federal administration, whether that's ICE or just the Trump administration. So he's taken that, and it's not just Seattle, San Francisco and Portland are also doing the same thing. So it's not just exclusively a Seattle issue here, but you are starting to see this divide here between these sanctuary cities and the federal administration.
Yeah, I cover Spokane, and the Spokane City Council, they passed a resolution there essentially affirming the rights of this population as well. And in doing so, we had a council member ripping up a DOJ memo, the Trump's policy against these sanctuary cities. It's not just happening in Seattle, Spokane, it's happening statewide in other areas across the country. And it's definitely something we'll have to keep an eye on as these blocks continue to push through the court and are potentially overturned. Because, a loss of federal funding, you said it would be major here. It wouldn't just mean the end of this immigration agency for Seattle. It would upend a major portion of Seattle's annual budget. Spokane, all these cities where they would have to look at either we're going to cut services across the board for all residents now,
Mm-hmm.
or we're going to have to raise taxes massively to cover this loss. But definitely an issue that we'll keep our eyes on as we move
Absolutely.
forward, and appreciate you covering it, Spencer. But thank you for joining us for another episode of Washington in Focus, and we will see you next time.